Well, yesterday was a very busy day indeed for me. I went to Leigh-on-Sea in Essex at I left my house at 10:30 a.m. Went up there and I spent the afternoon with this gentleman, Mr. Graham Moore of the English Constitution Society and leader of the English Constitution Party, where he did a seminar. And that seminar I live streamed the whole thing. There's two parts to it: the actual seminar itself and the Q&A afterwards. What I did, because playing it back and from user feedback, it was actually ran in a cafe, and there was an awful lot of background noise and coffee percolators and all sorts of stuff like that. So what I've done this morning is run it through my editing software and try to strip out as much of the background noise as I possibly can and turn it into just a normal video which you can sit and watch. It's about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes long, and it really explains to you why we are in the bad state of affairs we are in within this country, and it really explains to you what our true, real, inalienable rights actually are and what we can do with them. If anybody wants to know what you can do to at least help get this country back, you need to watch things like this. You need to talk to your friends and your family, and you need to educate people, because as a lady said that popped up in the comments of the live stream yesterday, she was taught all of this stuff that you're about to see in the 50s at school, and all of a sudden it stopped. Why? Well, the reason will become clear. Enjoy.
And England, unity, right? What you started to see is the English waking up all over this country, and you started to see the English flag. Right? The English flag represents you, everyone here. And just before I go to say anything else, I want everyone to understand one thing. Nowhere in the English Constitution does it mention race, right? Nowhere. So when people start having a little pop, and I've got some books over there, which I'm going to show you, right? And I'll briefly talk about slavery, just to make sure you're all aware. White people from England, Ireland, Cornwall, were taken as slaves by the Barbary pirates. It's where we built our navy, right, to defend our people. Over 1.5 million of us, far more than anyone that was ever put into black slavery, right? And it was the English that stopped slavery, not the British. Once you understand the history, if you understand who Granville Sharp is, if you understand 1772, and read the history of it, you understand it was the English that stopped slavery, not the British. Right? Carry on. So, just to let you all know, we are no longer muted. More and more people are going to learn that we have a constitution that protects us, and our ancestors put that in place. So again, it's taking you the flag. We're no longer muted, and people are seeing all over England that we're waking up. So again, I'm going to park that one. Leigh. Very attractive system. Right, so we're on start, but normally I start the seminars by asking simple. And the second question is the interaction unbelievable. How many of this audience consider themselves to be British as opposed to English? What's Scottish or Irish? Right? How many people regard themselves as British? Put your hand up. Don't be shy, by the way. If you think you're British by the end of this, won't be. How many people think they're British? I'll show you what. How many people think they're English? Put your hands up. So almost every single one. Right. And then there's the obviously who doesn't, but they qualify. But I want everyone to understand something. The English, think or not, we was one of the only countries that allowed foreigners to come in and which they could give them. And breach our law. But again, this is all in our history, it's all in our history. The main reason that we do these seminars is to teach people that you have a constitution. How many people here have been told they don't have a constitution, don't have a written constitution? How many people think that and have been told that? But most of the people are looking around something. That's a lie. And it's a lie by politicians and what we call the ruling classes. They want to remove knowledge of what actually protects you as subjects to the realm of England. You are not citizens. So again, I will be talking very briefly on the difference between a country and a unitary state, because you've got British. The unitary state is not a country, and it says that in the law. England is a country. Scotland is a country. Northern Ireland is a country. But not the UK. The UK is known as a unitary state. And the reason why it can't be a country is because there's two separate jurisdictions. First jurisdiction is the common law of England, of Wales, and Northern Ireland. Funny enough, Southern Ireland as well. Scotland is Roman law jurisdiction. It's the same jurisdiction as the European Union. There is a plan. The European Union have been very honest for the last 30, 40 years. It's not the ones lying to you. The own politicians are the ones who are lying to you. What is their plan? It's called the 5 Presidents' Plan. I'm not going to go into massive details. What I will tell you now is in order for their plans to be fully operative, they need to regionalise England into 9 regions. They need to make them regions into administrative regions. In other words, Essex does not exist anymore. Essex used to be a kingdom in its own right. And you're not being told what's actually going on. So once you become the East region, and Colchester becomes the head of that region, you are in an administrative state. Once they have carried that out, you know where the other one is, don't you? London. Right. So if you want to know what's going to happen to Essex, look at London. The main point, and the reason I'm telling you this, is because once you understand what their plan is, that your politicians, that means the Conservative and Union Party, the Labour Party, the Liberals, and everyone else out there who is a unionist, have lied to you, and they are seeking to destroy the future rights of your children and your grandchildren, and I don't care whether you are black, white, or brown. Right? You are English, and the English Constitution protects you and your future generations, which I'll be going into when we get to these documents at the end, and a trust document that was put in place so they could never take these rights. You've all been lied to. We go back to the earliest parts, and one thing you've all got to realise, by the way, I'm going to mention this, I'm not going to mention it briefly. There's issues, I don't really know Essex and all over England, particularly in Edinburgh. One of the things they didn't like was a certain lady stood up, she went out and speak. In that speech, she mentioned the Convention Parliament and the English Bill of Rights, and the fact that the English and the English Bill of Rights is superior because it came from a Convention Parliament. That's this document. They don't want you to know that exists. They try to erase it from your memory. And they've done it over the last at least 80 years. I've traced it back to 1815. It's a long-term plan to destroy England. So again, there are problems in Essex. In Epping, a lady was arrested. She read out the speech. She showed, unfortunately, a British flag. She was arrested. But the speech is what triggered them. Because in that speech, she spoke of England. If you then go and look at the speech, they started to edit out when she started talking about the English Bill of Rights. Someone else called Rupert Lowe. Everyone heard of Rupert Lowe? Only politician to stand up in Parliament and say, we have a Bill of Rights. Right? Week later, he's gone. No longer in the Reform Party. Right? That's what they're trying to hide. And that, which was an extension. And these books, as a group, is in there. And what I'm going to do is go through it. So first major part everyone needs to understand. But by the way, when we get to about somewhere like the time, it'll go on forever. 2 o'clock, whatever break, get some more drinks, do what you've got to do, and then we'll come back and then we have a questions and answers. And then bars staying open and you can have a chat and do what we've got to do. But there's some really important stuff to get through first. So we're not going all the way back through Anglo-Saxon history. But what we are going to be talking about is prior to the Magna Carta of 1215, so there's one before that, actually, before there's something else that existed, which was the Charter of 1100. That was the main charter that gives important. There's a charter, by the way, of business lecture. There's certain groups of people underneath that because they don't understand the law, and they don't understand where the law comes from. Right? So the Charter of Liberties, you had saying from the Charter of Forest, if I went through 15 documents, we'd have to go all the way around this place and you'll be looking at the same way. And then I only say to people, they say to me, I should say this, they say to me, we haven't got a written constitution. No, sorry, we haven't got a constitution. So I always say to them, if we haven't got a constitution, then why do we live in a constitutional monarchy? If we haven't got a constitution, how did the monarchy come about? How did that court come about? How did our parliament come about? We have a constitution. And then they say, we haven't got a written constitution. So what I do then is say, here's the Housebridge Laws of England. Here are all the laws contained. And again, this is Housebridge Laws of England, 4th edition, volume number 8, Constitutional Laws. You all agree that's quite a thick, sizable book. It's written common law. And there's another one. Housebridge Statute, 4th edition, volume number 10. Question message, what goes above that? Constitutional law. And as you can see, there's quite a few elements of that. I use that money. And open these books up when judges say we haven't got a constitution, I'll say what's that? And the judge says to me we haven't got a Bill of Rights, I said, well, can I just read it from our and I have done that. And then I would say to you, meaning these people, but I would say to you, we haven't got a codified constitution. Many of these are codified. It's actually got 13 wrongs and 13 rights. Most often we quoted one of these, Article 9, is free. The problem they've got is this document says all and singular. Every one of them rights is still your right. The right to keep their arms for self-defence. They can never take it off. And if you wanted to prove to you that that's right, recent times I've had 2 people get not guilty, and they've alleged they've got an offensive weapon in a public place. They come and spoke to me, they remembered, and said, this is what they've charged me with, and they're going to give me 3 years. No previous convictions. I wrote out, they start stating, using the English Bill of Rights and other parts of the law, meaning literally, it's called stare decisis, where you can use precedents that have been used in the past by the courts. He showed that. One person was discontinued, and the other person, the judge, went to call in the jury and said, what's your argument? He said, my argument's the English Bill of Rights. Right? And the judge found him not guilty. But you're not told that. You're not told that by solicitors, British. You're not told that by barristers, British. Right? Because they are removing your rights bit by bit. But they're not just doing it to you, they're doing it to your future grandchildren. And unless you stand up and understand what this means, they lose everything. And we don't want to be that generation. So again, we've seen that the books exist. another great one here. Select statutes, places and documents, it's from about 200 years old, to illustrate English constitutional history. It's got all the major statutes in there. Guess what? Reasonable. Without any next you read what the law actually says, not what they try to cheat and make it mean something that it doesn't. So they lie to you. Before I go any further, I'm just going to make sure I get these are important. There's something called the Hamlin Lectures. The Hamlin Lectures was a lady visitor from Devon. When she died, she was very wealthy. She created it. So what I'm trying to tell you really is you can go and read this yourself. Right? You don't have to just listen to me. These lectures were put into trust, and the most senior people in law were to come along and tell the normal everyday working people like me what the law is. So again, Sir John Lawes had the lectures. The common law and Steve Red. Again, you've got a trial by jury, so now you've got all them idiots that tell you you get into common law or not even going to get involved with the people. Right? Don't read that book. Right? Most people don't even know that women weren't allowed on juries until 1919. Right? So if you want to go back to how it was in 1215, trust me, read that book, they tell you the absolute truth. And juries as we know them today are not about in the terms of the Magna Carta. The juries that as we know them now about 180 years later. So again, that's trial by jury by longevity on another motion. The first lecture was given by Lord Kenning in 1949. It's called Freedom Under Law. Because he's one of our greatest judges, and just to make sure you're all big on this, English. He was for the English working class. He actually sit there. The only time an Englishman gets a fair trial is not on the bench. Right. Even on appeal. He's one of this go about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, one of his clerks, getting on a bit, interestingly, he said, Tom would have loved you. Constitutional fundamentals. So William Wade, right? People never hear about him. Instead, they hear about this other person, about this book, which is A.V. Dyson. Anyone heard of A.V. Dyson? He wrote two books. I didn't tell you about that one. That's the original, where he changed his mind and said Parliament is not sovereign, the people are. Right? But they never refer to that book. Right? So he changed his mind. Again, what I do is show people evidence. Someone else, Sir William Wade. The reason I'm showing you these, so you understand, you can go and read it. I'm just a normal everyday person. Right? So again, I've read all this. Constitutional fundamentals. Sir William Wade, one of our greatest scholars. Just as equal as A.V. Dyson. What did he say? He said Parliament isn't sovereign. Constitution is sovereign, the rule of law is sovereign, and the people are sovereign. Right? So all of that information is in there, and all you've got to do, apart from watching my shows on Rumble, is go through that. So, then we're going to get back into this. So in 1215, we had the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is actually the Magna Charta is the Great Charter. That's what it refers to as 1215. There's four variations of it. But one thing that people do need to understand is the Magna Carta, the original 1215, can never be repealed. You might have to speak to the Stuart behind the bar to work out where the streets are. I'm not sure where you'll think from. So again, you've got the Magna Carta of 1215. You cannot repeat it, right? The major point is you cannot repeat it. And why can't you? And why can't Parliament repeat it? Because it was out of the jurisdiction of Parliament. Parliament hadn't been created until 1275. Right? So Parliament was later. It can't repeal something that wasn't within its jurisdiction to do. Right? There's various other things that people say about the Magna Carta. One thing you cannot do is you cannot repeal. And Parliament itself, if you look at Hansard, has admitted that. But now we cross over to one, there's another one that's got to go up there, which is the first statute of Westminster 1275. In particular, chapter 5 is still in existence, which protects your elections, which we distribute in the High Court, by the way, and I've acknowledged it's still in existence and it's not been repealed. So the point being that when Parliament, that particular Parliament, what you should all know, all understand, and especially because of the rapes going on all over this country, the English, because the British didn't exist in any form, the English in 1275, as part of the first statute of Westminster in 1275, guess what it said? You cannot, by law, ravish a woman. Ravish means rape. But if you do, you would be hanged. So the first people to bring in a rule protecting women globally were the English. And what have we got now? Our kids being raped all over this country, and yet the English, or some of them, are waving the British flag that took that right away. So when you see the English flag, remember that the English flag means England as a country. When you wave any other flag, you are not waving the English country flag. You are not English. If you want to support the Union, that British Union flag is no different to the European Union. And guess what? The USSR, which was a unitary state. The same person who created Soviet in 1948. Again, moving to Magna Carta. So when they first brought back the Magna Carta, by the way, must have been some civil law. But what I'm going to do is read some of this and then explain what it means, and then show you in the law books where it says it. Magna Carta, and again, you're going into that one, imprisonment. So this is 10, 20, 19, what's that, 21, 21. Imprisonment, etc., contrary to law, administration of justice. No free man shall be taken or imprisoned, or be dismissed of his freehold, or liberty, or free customs, or be outlawed, or exiled. So you can't be exiled from anywhere. Someone tries to ban you from Essex because you're protesting, you can come back to that and say you can't do that. Right? And this still stands in law. Or any otherwise destroyed, nor will we pass upon him a condemning but by lawful judgment of his peers, meaning the jury, or by the law of the land. Two separate things. Right? We will sell to no man, and we will deny and defer to any man either justice or right. There's various other things. That's the fact. There's certain elements still in the fact. Really and truthfully, the original Magna Carta is still in full force. Now, some people say that this on its own is our constitution, which is rubbish. Right. We're going to go forward. One's heard of peasants' revolt. Yeah. Let me ask you a question of the audience, because this will always happen. Where to start?
Fobbing.
Where?
Fobbing.
Now it's finished there.
Fobbing.
It started in Brentwood, in Essex.
Fobbing.
Close enough. Started, then decided, again, on the orders of the Chancellor, take taxes off the people of Essex. One of the things they did is they went to Brentford and stuck their fingers in young females that they wanted, right, to check and see if they were virgin. Right? The dads come out, all that soul, whacked the head off the king's men, and then there was a bit of a fight in the village. They sent more soldiers, all of the men come out with their swords and done a whole lot of them. That's what started it off. But it was because the king's men were interfering with the women in the town, and it started an attack. Then it went from Brentford, crossed over, different places, Norfolk, everyone started to get together. They had the internet. What? They crossed over the river in Erith, travelled down, picked up some more people in Canterbury. I'm talking about normal tradespeople, normal working men. Right? Picked them back up with their arms and their weapons. Guess where they went? Watch this stuff. Guess what happened, people? The system decided to take one of them and bang him up in Rochester Castle. So the people said, fair enough. They surrounded the castle, laid siege to the castle, and said, unless you let him go, we're going to do the lot of you. Right? Drawbridge drops down, out he walks, right? And they said, right, come on. And then they carried on all the way out to Blackheath, when they then converged on London. And there was quite a few battles in London, but they killed a number of people within the system. Right? There's lots of things that happened after that. It's a whole event that went on for quite some time. But Wat Tyler was really one of the last to die. Why did he die, by the way? Do you know? Because the king had done little deals with people in the background. They all went, you know what we want, all the way, right? Wat Tyler and the group from Kent was left there, and then they got killed. Right? So they should have stuck together until everyone got what they wanted from that revolution. That was a peasants' revolt. From that, we moved forward. What we're really going to be talking about today are the things that are happening now. I've got to make sure I've got enough time to do it. Something called the Glorious Revolution. Right, so again, in certain books, this book is about 40 years old. It was written, and it's called The Declaration of Rights, 1689. What people don't realise is the Glorious Revolution, William was asked to come to England. And there's all these people saying he invaded, etc. He didn't, right? The king lost his bottle, threw the English seal in the River Thames. Off he went in his little rowing boat, got all the way to think it was something like Ramsgate, where the people had gotten away to it. They captured him, asked should we send him back, and the people in London said no, because he lose his head, let him escape. So they let him go, they didn't want to top him. But King William and Mary had already landed in a fantastic place called Brixham in Devon. Right? And by the way, Queen Elizabeth II went down here on the 300th anniversary, and then she made a speech in Parliament and told everyone that the Bill of Rights is still law, and it's the foundation of our democracy. And the judiciary is secular, right? Which is not what we're seeing at the moment. So the reason why these books, the Bill of Rights, so let me make sure I get the right thing. The Glorious Revolution produced a trilogy of protection, right? The Declaration of Reasons that no one talks about. The Declaration of Reasons. Right? So it was what really read out to the people to why he was here. He'd been asked to come, and then he starts to tell you the story. Oh, wait, this is archive. The weirdest thing possible is like thinking about what's happening now, except the names have changed. It's exactly the same thing. Right? The next part of that is something called the Declaration of Rights. The Declaration of Rights is what's this about? Well, they never tell you about it, they never talk about it. The Declaration of Rights is a contract, and it is the original contract between the king and the people. Right? It was known as the kingdom without a king at the time. There was no king. There ain't no king, there ain't no parliament. So what they did was they got together the people, and it's called the Convention Parliament. It's the most powerful thing in the country. In law, a Convention Parliament is the most powerful thing there is. There is nothing more powerful. And what they did is they had a debate and discussed it, and there was 27 heads of terms. By the way, I've read every one of them. The heads of terms in a contract, they explained what the problem was, they explained what the solution was, and then the king had to agree to it. And there was an agreement, and that's called the Declaration. Everyone heard about when it was in Westminster Palace, and they read the Declaration of Rights, and even Mary agreed to the thing. That's the only reason it's been forward. The only reason you've got a king now is because of that Declaration of Rights. It's so crucially important, people don't understand. There's 27 heads of terms. They go against any offence terms, you have got something called the private right injury in private law, which is what I specialise for. In America, they know all about it. But here, well, poo-poo, there's no such thing. It's a lie. They're lying to you. So that's the Declaration of Rights. How do you move on to that? Before we get to the Bill of Rights, which is crucial, which is public law, they took the Declaration of Rights, so that it's a private contract, and they needed this. It's called the Crown and Parliament Recognition Act 1689. It's still law today. It has to be law. And there it says, King and Queen recognise the acts of the said Parliament were and are laws, statutes, and are to be obeyed. Right? Then it tells you all the details. You can go, but literally, read this. And that enactment created Coronation Oath. If anyone wants to understand exactly what this says, it's more detailed, but again, you've got to understand what it is. So, an act for the establishing the Coronation Oath Act. Right. So that means that the Crown, they must take this oath. Otherwise, they take two oaths. That oath means they can never go against you or your rights. And if their authorities, meaning their soft servants, not yours, meaning Crown servants, by the way, people need to understand this. These constables are Crown servants. They're not public servants. We don't live in a republic. We live in a Crown monarchy. Therefore, police constables are they're individually liable, and we've already won this in the High Court. And I'm sure we won't offer this motion to show it. Police constables are taken up. They can't be a police constable, just like a king, unless they obey the laws of the land. And if they go against the laws of the land, for example, arresting you, assaulting you, doing any of them things, you've got a private action against them as an individual, and you can bring proceedings against them criminally, what's something else called contempt of statute and contempt of sovereign. You're not being taught this anymore. 100 years ago, you was taught this in the school. But now they've removed it. When did they remove it? Early 1970s. Why? Because we went into the European Union. Why did they remove it? That documents that there has got a supremacy clause. And in this supremacy clause, what does it say? No one can have power over the English but the English. So the European Convention of Human Rights can have no power over you. The European Union and its Council can have no power over you. It's all in that. But they didn't want to do that. So they removed it from your education. And by removing it from your education, they remove it from your children's education. And then no one has got any rights. You become slaves. That was protecting you from becoming a slave. Part of the debt system that they now operate. So getting back to the Coronation Oath Act, once you've taken this, the King has taken this, there's two parts of the oath, the Accession Oath and the Coronation Oath Act. By the way, he's the defender of the faith. The faith means the Protestant religion. What? Not the Roman Catholic religion, not any other Christian. The Protestant faith and Presbyterian. That's where the Scots have got equal protection because they've got the same right. 1689. If the King goes against this and you petition the King, I'm not talking about Article 61 to the Magna Carta. There's a petition system that you need to do. Once you put that petition in, if you petition Parliament and they ignore it, you petition the King because he's perjuring his oath, a serious offence under the common law of England, right? They top you for it. If he's gone against your petition, the law of England says you, as the people, are entitled to armed rebellion. Because it's your duty to England, your future generations, and your ancestors to rise up like your ancestors did before you. Tells you in that. It actually says it. But they want to deceive you. So without getting back into that, I'm going to go straight over to the English Bill of Rights. And that's declaring the rights and liberties of the subject, rights and liberties of the subject, and settling the succession of the crown. But when you come down and you have a look at exactly what's been said, this document and the original, they've doctored this slightly, I won't go into that in this session, but it says the heads of the Declaration of the Lords and Commons recited. Remember I told you about the declarations? 27 of them. It then tells you this is a history of exactly what's going on. Whereas the late King James II, by the assistance of the diverse evil councillors, judges, do you mean they're crooked judges? You are. What? Oh, they've done none of them are crooked. Certainly not 400 years ago. It's just as bad as the ones we've got now. Well, there it is. Judges and ministers. What do you mean? Do you mean ministers are crooked and doing all these strange things? And back there they was. Yeah. Even then, employed by him, they're employed judges are the Crown's judges. They're not your judges, they belong to him. Parliament belongs to the Crown. That's why when this comes into it, you go against your rope, the whole lot's gone, we'll take it off there. Right? You either do what we want and keep things nice, or we'll come back at that. By him, he endeavour to subvert and extirpate the Protestant religion and the laws and liberties of this kingdom. So it's telling you again, every one of these documents, if I went through the history of every one of them, you'd all be going, well, this is all law. Why are you doing this to us? Because you've been denied the knowledge. Right? If you don't know that you've got them rights, and you just say, if police officers that comes up and says, yeah, you can't go to that protest, I'm going to tell you to move. Well, if you had hundreds of you that turn around and say, hang on a minute, that's against my Bill of Rights. That's against the Magna Carta. That's against the Constitution of this country. You're the one doing it all. By the way, if a police officer pulls that back on you, you have the right to arrest him for assault. Because if you've done nothing wrong, assault means a threat of violence. Right? You have the right as a citizen of England, it is your duty to arrest that person. And they never tell you that. What they don't like about me is not go around telling people. You understand, if they draw a back on you, they handcuff them. For no reason whatsoever. So let's say they turn up, you think, oh, not being funny, but you get these idiots who they say, you're under arrest like that. Right? It's unlawful to put handcuffs on you. It's assault, right? But instead you're going like that. They have to have a reason to put handcuffs on you. It's assault. If you're not, so these little old ladies, you see that 10-year-old kid there? There's certain reasons why they're allowed to handcuff you. Let me tell you something, there are only people in this world that old me to handcuff. There was another one up north. I believe she was a 9-year-old child. Listen to this, they tased her. What? They tased a 9-year-old child. I went mad. All I said was, as a dad, right, she had a pair of garden shears. I said, I'm telling you, I could use my voice without touching her, and she would have dropped them shears, right? Everyone knows that if you've got good parenting skills, you know your voice changes, your kid goes, woo, like that, right? My dad's 95, if his voice holds up like that, he's 95. So, people must understand, you've got lots and lots, and I can't go through them all, but you will understand this is an extremely powerful document. It's different to the Declaration of Rights. The Declaration of Rights is called private law. It's law in contract with a crown that's contracted, and it's called the original contract. Even with Blackstone, and again, the Institutes of England, where he talks about English law, goes all the way through that and explains all your laws. On this, that's called public law. So public law and private law, I talk, everyone heard of the term belt and braces. So where you put a belt on and you have braces, you've got no chance in the trousers falling down, right? They're doubling up the Declaration of Rights and the Bill of Rights, private law, public law, you ain't losing your rights. So how do they do it? If like a magician, they just don't show you anymore and teach you. By the way, the Acts of Union says these rights must be communicated to the people. Right? You've never been taught it in school. By the way, if you do a law degree, they don't even teach you this. That's why I've said to people, before you become a judge, a solicitor, or a barrister, you need to do a 2-year minimum, which we're designing, course on fundamental constitutional law. Everyone know that a police officer prior to 2008, before he took the oath to become a police officer, he had to take in a constitution. By the way, he wasn't allowed to have access to the public unless he was supervised. There's a probationer for 2 years. Put one out the window. He had to take, at the end of 2 years, he had to take a constitutional exam. And if he didn't pass it, he couldn't be a police constable. They took it all away, and now what they've got is what I call the red guard. So the red guard just not tried, they're idiots. They stick them in a uniform, and not being funny for women, but they're putting all these women in uniform, right? You get 10 geezers and 1 woman, police officer, right? You've got no chance of controlling 10 men that want to have a fight. Right? Whereas in the old days, there was police officers that I knew who could walk in, like I was thinking with my dad, they could just use their voice in the geezers and step back, right? And they respect the fact that that cop is going to say, I'll take one of you out, and that one will do lots of further. That's the way they used to do it. But getting back to, now this is a really important one, the Act of Settlement, the 1700, that's when it was put in place. There's a reason why this happened. Now, what it says is Act of Settlement, an act for the further limitation of the Crown and better securing the rights and liberties of the subjects. So you've got a trilogy: the Declaration from the Glorious Revolution, the Declaration of Reasons, the Declaration of Rights, the English Bill of Rights. They had a little bit of a gap, right? And only about 20 years, 18, 20 years, some things went, and they then needed the Act of Settlement. And what that was an extension of this. Some people in law, scholars, tell people that that's more important than a Bill of Rights. In some ways, I think it is. In chapter 4, guess what it tells you? It tells you that the laws of England are your birthright. It tells you that in the laws. That can never be removed. So your birthright, you've got air rights to all of this. The Bill of Rights, the original chapter 3 and chapter 2, protected this the original part of this protected the Magna Carta, protected the Charter of the Forest, protected every element of your English rights going back centuries. It was all protected by these documents from the British Revolution. Yet they've erased it from your memory. Right? So when you look at that Act of Settlement, there was something in there. This is the bit people often say, well, and it said, you cannot be a member of Parliament, you cannot be in the House of Lords, you cannot be a police constable, you cannot be the frigging Mayor of London, unless you are born of English parents. Right? Double, again, belt and braces. 2 parents must be English. If they're not English, you can't have any authority over the English. That was in that document. It was in there, not for racial issues. You're going to love this. King William was dead. Right? Mary was actually Scottish and English. Right? But King William was stuck. Moving somebody in. King William was a good guy. He started quick authority in Parliament in positions of profit, right? They started taking liberties, started getting freedom. Right? So the English started to rise up. Again, the King says, I'll tell you what we need. Make sure there's no Dutch in positions of power. I don't know anyone knows any Dutch people, but they look just like me, speak little language. Right? They're so basically that. What they said was, you cannot have them people in our Parliament because they're going against our English liberties. Right? They started doing all these things in the background. It's a fascinating history. That's what they did, and they created that. So skipping forward to after the Second World War, in 1948, they created something called the British Nationality Act. 1948. Guess what? Hidden in the depths of that law, without any of you knowing, that's a constitutional statute. An entrenched statute. It's been there for years. In 1948, under the British Nationality Act, Schedule 4, buried in legislation, they repealed the part that says you have to be born of English parents. 3 years after the end of the Second World War. Why did they do that? It was an Attlee government. The Attlee government and the Labour Party are communists. They took control of England at one tiny little bit to take that out. That's why you've got people like Diane Abbott. Listen, I got black people. You've got a black person that's been here 3 generations, and I have this discussion, I'm not going to get into it, I'm not an evangelist. Right? So I'm a constitutionalist. As long as the Constitution says you can leave that, I haven't got a problem. As long as you've got an allegiance to England, not British, England, I haven't got a problem with it. Right? As long as you abide by English law, by the way, this is a Christian country will be abiding on rights, right? That is what I look at. So what we did is expanded all of that, right? And made sure. So the British Nationality Act was what started with. But 1948, we lost the war. Do you make sure you're all aware of this? Earlier on, in history, there's another there. Has everyone heard of Joseph Stalin? Joseph Stalin created a commissar of identity in the Soviet Union, and he created an identity and a nationality called Soviet. That was copied by our Labour government and brought into the British Nationality Act. That's why I'm saying if you wave that British flag, you are actually waving the flag of the Soviet Union. And you don't even realise it because of what they've done. It's got nothing to do with the colour of your skin. It's got to do with what they've done. And it's the politicians that are lying to you. And by the way, the slow march through the institutions started with academia for a reason. Where do all these liberals, solicitors, and barristers, they do speak so well? Where do they go? They go to universities. Universities were infiltrated first. And then they removed the knowledge of the Constitution and the laws of the land from them. It happened with a handed lectures. Cambridge University took Exeter University, who had control of their online lectures. Cambridge got hold of it, disappeared off the internet. Unfortunate for them, there's a group of people in the English Constitution Society, which I'm very and the English Constitution Party, which I'm the leader of, they said, we're not having this, that's our right to access. Because they said we didn't know anything about it. Contacting Cambridge University and said, you put them lectures back online. The whole lot come back up again. And everyone is saying now we've got access. Because you can learn. That's my job is not to fight your battles. It is to empower you to understand you have a constitution. And there's many of us now who are summing up to retirement all the time. All the time you can get enough into that, and then you're saving your grandchildren even in 30 or 40 years' time. That's what you should look at doing. Yeah, making sure everyone understands. Joseph Stalin created Soviet as a national identity because just to make sure everyone gets it. What happened in 1991? The Soviet Union was dissolved by a signature. Guess what? In the unitary state of the USSR, the Soviet Union, what do you think would have happened? There's 2 ways to do this, by the way. What do you think would happen if we avoid the accident anyway? go back to being England. It's like Russia, actually. England, Scotland, Wales is part of England. But again, if I look at that information, I've got a problem with it. Right? But the main part is all these places go back to what they was envisioned, which is countries. They're not part of the political union. Right? It's the politicians who've done it, you know. During the European Union, we never lied about this, they're quite open. It's your own politicians. But because you're in Essex, and you come from Essex, you need to all understand something. Essex was its own kingdom. All of a sudden, it's no longer there. Did you all know that there's a group of people called the Essex Rifles? You ever heard of them? Yeah. They actually fought off. They fought over. There was an invasion, they all went back. This is where the right to keep their arms comes in, picked up their rifles, went down to the bench, started pot shots at the invading force. Did you see any of that going on in the English Channel at the moment? Right? You even pick up a catapult, you're risking, let alone pick up a firearm and start shooting at it. So everyone needs to understand that side. Before I go on, so there's much more obvious that theme of these in total. Need to do a full, you have to be in quite a large area to play every one of them and go through it 8 times hours. And I've got to be conscious. We are going to get into this. We're going to go for the 2 hour questions and answers. That's the interesting part for me, by the way, because I'll get involved in the questions. Let's go back to this in the middle. Don't forget, you can come up and take photos of any of these books. And by the way, if anyone's ever seen my show on London, by the way, just been saying again on YouTube. They don't like me on YouTube. They don't like people telling the truth. So again, we're going to get back into this. Everyone should understand, like the purpose of these. By the way, you can buy these second-hand individually. You buy second-hand ones individually, they tend to be quite cheap, about 30 quid a book. You try to buy the latest set, which I'm on the book. It's about 7.5 grand for the set, and then 2 sets. That's 14 grand for you even start. Don't need all of that. You only need the constitution. You can see with the latest edition. I remember buying it, it's about £700. Whereas you can get one of them to about then you've got two separate books. How's statutes in England? How's laws in England? What's the difference between the two? Anyone know? One statutory law, one common. So everyone says to look, it's like common law don't exist in the labour bit. But so does the statutory law, and statutory defences, which is why a lot of these people get in trouble. They bring themselves legal experts. They don't need, I mean, I don't believe in European rights. I think I'm the only person so it's not as if I think all these rights, but I actually got on the junction of these points down. And again, when we switch to the other people, and one comes to the court. So I mean, most people say I'm completely different. I'm not like I am on my diet. It's just been quite cut off on the government. That's your relationship. And you just talk to them. But your job is not to aggravate the justice. What they're to make a decision. You do it. Don't go in and say, bring me your own. Tell me what your own. I'm not saying anything. I've got a legal picture. My legal picture is got to be in my birth certificate. Just do something. Because people like that will hold children in consent and send you to the cells. And then also should be own law. What? If you get up there and say, it's a great issue. I'm not saying this is true. Someone says she has self-harm. Right? Because I was just talking to her. The other, everyone noticed that the King's Council was so boring, both judges rolling their eyes. So when I got up and said, this is me, they're like, oh, that we can listen to a normal person. I said, don't. they will go on your side, even a magistrate. We've had magistrates with us. Magistrates are people just like me and you. And as long as you say it the right way to them, don't aggravate them, they'll find it in your face. And they've got that power in what they can do. I mean, we got quite a few old buildings. And again, it's never publicised. By the way, I don't charge. I only take on strategic. So I'm not a citizen, I'm not a barrister, I'm a constitution. And I teach people about the constitution and that's it. But, you get into this, because where you can pointedly go through it. So at the top there, you can see an English flag. Below, the common law constitutional rights belonging to the English. Right, so you get one, I'm going to say it, I'll send you English, right, so it's in details like this. Right. The right of England and its subjects to defend themselves. Where that comes from, English Bill of Rights. Guess what? It was in pre-existing rights. That's what people don't understand. The English have used that right. After it was done themselves. It's all the way back to Anglo-Saxon right. You don't read the Anglo-Saxon laws, which are this one I love. If you harm a women's children, right, so in other words, the mum, right, you've got children, you were kids, she has the right to stop you, in other words, kill her, right, and no one can prosecute her. And I was like, oh, I love that. Why have we still got these laws, right? The mum is to protect her and educate her in the family. It was always that way in England. The dad went out, and they're giving them done whatever. The woman's one who protects the family. A right to a jury. Does everyone know that they're trying to cancel our juries? Yeah. Did you know that they took out grand juries in 1929? The way they used to keep the ruling classes and hold them to account. Does everyone know you've got grand juries in America? Yeah. They got it from us. But the British moved grand juries. It was the way that you would bring people to justice in this country. We could call on a grand jury, and then the way a grand jury works is you put the prosecution evidence forward, so the guy ain't there. That's why you get a civil indictment, right? And then you put it to the jury, but it's enough evidence to arrest. Right? So if you get an indictment from the grand jury, it's the most important. It means it's an arrest warrant from your own people. That's what the grand jury means, right? And what they're actually doing by giving an indictment is saying, this is more used in America, this is used here, probable cause. So it's not saying you're guilty, because you have to give your defence for that. But what they're saying is that there's probable cause. In other words, there's evidence to say you committed this offence. And then you get an indictment. And then you get the opportunity to go through another court, and then they put in the jury and they listen to both sides of the evidence. They cancelled that in 1929, meaning they removed that from your rights system. That's how you could have called all of these politicians. You could have had them in front of the grand jury and held them to account over the movement. But we'll get to who in a couple of minutes. Well, no, you've got the right. I've got to tell you this one. You've got the right to remain silent. Right. So why is it that people, when they get arrested, oh, well, I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm going to say this and I'm saying that. Right. As soon as you open your mouth, you sent yourself to prison. Lucy Carley sent herself to prison. Then people who pleaded guilty on the advice of their British barristers and British solicitors, right? Speak to someone like me. Not one of them would have done a day's burn. Not one day behind the door if they'd had me sitting in there with them. Or even if they'd spoken to me first. Right? As soon as a police officer comes up to you and don't mess about with certain things and again, free man in the land nonsense, right? A copper comes up to you, he's got to have reasonable cause that you committed an offence or a statement from someone that you have committed an offence. If you haven't committed an offence, you've got no right to be talking to you. If they arrest you, they'll read you out exactly what you've been arrested for by law, and if they don't do that, the whole thing is thrown out, right? They have to tell you what you've been arrested for. Then they say to you, and I'll give you a couple of examples of this, they'll say to you, if you've got anything to say, you just say no comment. We take you off, if you've got nothing, put you in a cell, they'll bring you into an interview, right? They sit you down on an interview and you say, no comment. Well, they'll ask you questions, say no comment. They'll come up to you and they say, all right, well, you want to cut the tea, mate? And you go, yeah. You answer one question, they put to the judge. He's answered some questions and not others. They read out all of the incriminating questions that they've asked you, and all of your no comment. That's what brings that in as evidence. You say no comment to everything, they can't read it. Used to do this, some people just stare and laugh at the wall, right? It's not experience on fun. The other way, the woman darker and it's a woman, right? Interviewing them. So now we'll let them know, but if you something right, just stare at their face. Make her feel uncomfortable and she will not want to continue with that interview. You get up, switch the tape off and walk out, right? But when you've got knowledge of what that interview means, if you open your mouth, let me tell you something now, these books here, they're trying to do places really big. There's thousands of laws. They need you to open your mouth once and they will find something you need for, charge you for, which you in the cell. That's it, but you manage to won't be about, right? Shut up. Do not say a single word. That's it. If you have to spend 3 days in a prison cell, ask Lucy Collins. Would you rather spend 3 days in a prison cell? By the way, who don't that bad, right? Or do you want to spend 3 years behind bars? Because as soon as you open your mouth, as soon as you employ a British solicitor and a British barrister, you are God. Right? And yet people still trust them. They're all feeding off the system. You are just a process of that system. They don't care about you. Right? When you go to prison, the policeman goes home at night, walks in the pub. You're the one banged up. Shut up. Do not say a word. Ask anyone who knows me. Right? If they arrest me, you can ask my ex-wife, you see a few of them, right? Don't say anything. Literally, nothing. And if they band you up for 2 weeks, won't let you out on bail. Shut up. Don't say anything. And then all of a sudden you'll get an application, put around a good brief, or someone like me, that we put in a habeas corpus writ. And so there is absolutely no evidence. This person has remained silent. There's no reason to have him in prison. This is political regulation. You've got to have someone that does it for you, not these other people in the background. Like to govern themselves via county, district, and parish council. Do you all understand that regionalisation is removing parish council? Local council, a whole lot. The reason they're doing it is because they have to make it into an administrative state or an administrative region. Why are they doing that? Because once they've removed England, and there's no common law jurisdiction anymore, because it's all administrative state and administrative law, you're the same as Scotland, right? And in taking back into the European Union, there's no common law jurisdiction in the European Union. The European Union can now call itself a country, but you just lost yours. That's what they're planning. That's in excess of 40 years. Right. So again, it's all part of what they're doing. The right to property freehold. Any freeholders? You're not. Right. So you're not freeholder. There's only one true freeholder in this country, and that is called fee simple. Fee simple means you go everything under the ground and all the way up in the sky. There's various things. It's more likely to get fee simple in America now. Right. But in 1998. They removed property law rights. Why did they do that? With the Leasehold Act of 1998, I think it was, the year. And let's say you've got a freehold property, you lease it to me, I come in on a rent agreement, I live there for 2 years and I say, I want to buy this back. You say, I don't want to sell it to you. I can force you to sell it to me, but take it to the court under the Leasehold Act, so you ain't got no rights to freehold with them. I can come along and go bang and take it off there. Yeah, this is English law that's been butchered by the communists and the British. A right to full freedom of navigation and trade. Everyone remember the COVID? Acts of Union tells you, and so does these other laws. You can travel anywhere in England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Ireland, and the Dominions. Some people won't like this. And what do they call them? The plantations. Very good, these plantations. Right? But the plantations, many of them, what the people said, they were like work always, more by the British than the English. And the English dominions meant that they was completely independent, right? It changed in 1706, 1707, and that is why the Americans who were actually the English turned on the British. So, by the way, it's not the first time I'm saying. So again, full right to full freedom of navigation and trade, right? That means, just to give you an example, if someone says to you, you cannot do a protest in Italy, that goes against your constitutional rights. You never ever hear a solicitor or barrister argue that. Right? I can tell you now, it's a fundamental right. You can travel anywhere. They've got bail conditions on really, like no apparent reason other than where they want to say that you cannot travel to Kent, or you cannot travel to Essex, or you cannot travel to Shropshire. That is illegal. They cannot do it. But no one's challenging it. Right? Imagine if we had all these people we are, with that little bit of knowledge, and you stood up as a person. By the way, I'm satisfied person to challenge it. I mean, they're finding that out now in a phone call with me, with the phone call in Hemsby election. I mean, it's actually one person to stand up. I know the law, because by the way, you can represent yourself. You have stand if they do that against you. You've got voices in that corner. The right, bring out and protect our children. Anyone in the family group. The most evil people God ever put on this planet took complete and utter control of everyone and all families, right? The state can now put a guardian in place for your children, even though you as parents are still alive. And if the state want to switch off your kid's life or terminate your kid's life, they can. So there's nothing you can do about it. That never used to be that way. These people have done that. Right. So again, the right to habeas corpus. What does habeas corpus mean? It means stroking the bullet. If you're in prison for something or locked up, and let's say Stuart decides he didn't like my seminar this afternoon, so he locks me in the cellar, right? One of you would say, Graham Moore is being held in the cellar by Stuart. And he'll say, well, it was for. He didn't like the seminar. Right. Can't be called in the police, obviously. Right. You can actually get one of you can go to the High Court, in a habeas corpus with it. They can certainly get Stuart, grabbing by the and take him to a rifle. That's what habeas corpus with me. You have to reduce the body into cold. And then upside has to explain why is there holding in custody and whether or not it's, and the judge decides whether it's lawful custody or not. And if it's not, they release you. So it's a habeas corpus bit. And if you read Freedom Under the Law and in lectures by Lord Denning, he tells you that all the work the judges do, the most important is habeas corpus. If we get a habeas corpus writ on our desk, everything else gets paid. We only work on a habeas corpus writ until we've solved that problem. That's how powerful it is. Judges say habeas corpus, liberty and freedoms of the people is the most important thing. And if you read Freedom Under the Law, you would get a massive generation of what actually is going on. That the pretended power of suspending laws is illegal. Why is it? And the right said it. Declaration of Rights says it. So in other words, you can't have people saying, well, no, that law's not in place today. I had it up on the COVID, during COVID, when a police officer that was local rights for was walking towards us. Maybe what's his name? Burton was there. He lost his arm. So they're walking towards us, full white people, and I'm standing there with a Bill of Rights. And said, we have rights. We've got the Bill of Rights, they're full box, right? Imagine having rights squads just stomping towards us with their shield, with their mask on, and there was this sergeant went, not today, mate. It's all on video. That's an offence. It's also a criminal offence for him to say that. So the right to assert English ancient rights and liberties. You have all got the right to assert your ancient rights and liberties. Don't be shy. Everyone here, if I'm speaking to the men, especially some of them when they were a bit younger, listen, good luck to try her. And this can't ask for her phone number, she ain't going to give it to you, and she ain't going to show you're interested. Get over your shyness. You've got rights. Stand up for them. Claim your right. Tell them, I have got a right. And if you want to take it off me, I'm going to pursue you. Which is what we're doing currently in the High Court with another case. And then people are like, what? I thought it was only Chief Constable. No, that's what they tell me. The law says they're personally, individually liable if they commit a tort against you. What do you do then? What written against them? On the private law, private right injury, you have a claimant. You ask for a jury, you must do that within 28 days, right? Single individual copper, not the Chief Constable, you take his asset. You see how much power you've got? No one does it. No solicitor, no barrister can tell you you've got that right. This is affected. Rights to assert English rights and liberties. Pretending power dispensing with laws is illegal. Again, that's another slight right. There is a case after the Bible on that. But the right to petition the monarch, commitments and prosecutions for such petitioning are illegal. Right? Most of you, or some of you that know me, will know quite a few years ago, about 2007, apart from the fact that we were arrested and sat in apart from thousands, 3,000 people, I petitioned Right. So there's no standing outside Parliament. It's open Americans that they'll talk about the English Constitution, etc. That 30-year-old girl come along, took their cameras on, and they said, I said, 2 weeks ago, I've got a notice here. I actually done a recorded living to Buckingham Palace, just so I was doing it, and I've done it the right way. Put a document to Buckingham Palace. By Buckingham Palace. I was petitioning on this day outside Buckingham Palace. Kept it all. Went outside, people started talking. I said, this is a petition. Your Majesty, the Queen. Some people put little leaves out with the Queen looking out of the window with Philip, but at the time it was quite funny. That's how I was drag it there. And then switching the curtain. So the old bill nicked me. Right, so there's me having an argument with the chief superintendent, 2 inspectors, load of sergeants, and they arrested me, handcuffed me, dragged me off, threw me in the back of the van, took me down to Cannon Street, right, finally released me later on that night, gets taken to court, goes to court, it's Westminster Court in London, one of the worst magistrates in the country, the worst magistrate in the country. So the judge says, by the way, there's probably about, number one court, there's about 100 people in the gallery, supporting me. So again, this is where you have standing, so I can represent myself. So the judge said to me, Mr. Moore, what is your defence? So I held up a copy of the Bill of Rights in full as an authority. The Coronation Oath Act in full as an authority, and said I rely on those 2 documents for my defence. And the judge said to me, is this going to be a constitutional argument? I said, yes, sir, it is. Right. So he turned around, so the judge is now looking at CPS, and says to the CPS, have you got any video evidence? Listen to this, 30 police officers, all got video cameras. Said, no, sir, there's no video evidence. So he says, But you were 30 campers and none of them worked. No video of this. Sat back there. The judge just said to him, okay, we have a statement from a police officer. Right. She stood back up, she said, no, sir, there's no statement. So he says, so there's 30 police officers, the superintendent, 2 inspectors, 4 sergeants, and all these police constables, and there's not a single statement from these people. She sat down again and he went, oh, no, I sat up. So she stood up. He said, what are you going to do? She said, we offer no evidence. Right? The whole place erupted. Right? And everyone started hearing it. I was just looking at him. Then he said, like this was over it, he shouted at the public gallery, this is not a pantomime. One of them might shouted back, oh yes it is. Even the judge thought that's so the point I'm trying to make you is the judge then said to me, how much is it in your 5 witnesses and yourself court today? I said 350 quid. He said, I award you full cost. $10 million. He said, wait a minute. Like the check out and give him that money, right? Because he said, otherwise it goes all from the system. They literally sent me a check, 350 quid. So I won the case on the Constitution, right? But the police officers completely illegally, why didn't they have their cameras on? Why didn't they write a statement? It tells you there. The right to petition the monarch, commitments and prosecutions for such petitioning are illegal. So all of a sudden, they're going to get hit. You can't do that to a subject of the world. If they're petitioning the monarch, which I was doing, it's quite obvious, I've already put in a notice to the king, I'll be standing outside Buckingham Palace petitioning. Well, if no one says you have to do a petition, go up your name or something. Petition means making a demand. And that's what I was doing. So anyway, that caused them a massive problem, and it proved if you rely on the Constitution, there's nothing they can do. The election of members of Parliament ought to be free. That's what we're in court for now, today. Right? I run in council. Right? Who's the main person going against it? Sarah Patching is the Why would she do that? It was a crooked election. The whole thing was crooked. We just won. I won against 2 King's councils, 6 barristers, and an army of solicitors about their much, right? And then she's maybe standing, and then Peter Weir was probably at that court post, right? But 2 judges, and they found with a 32-page judgment and 84 paragraphs of law, they said at the end, the petition goes ahead. In other words, Mr. Moore is right. They hated it. In less than a week, I said some of my skeleton argument is he said that's the best skeleton argument I've ever read. Right? So we're just pushing it forward. And we hope to win. If not, we'll win in other ways. The election of members of Parliament ought to be free. What does that actually mean? What? Doesn't mean you ain't got to pay £500, does it? It means there can be no stuff done with. No one is allowed to influence you. The police are not allowed to intimidate you. Right? They're not allowed to intimidate your campaign, which is what they've done with us. Bear in mind, we stick up with disabled people and pensioners. Right? We're the only people that do. And there was a very lovely gentleman sitting in front of me when he was actually in the High Court. I just finished my part of that we stand up for people with disabilities and we stand up for pensioners. Next thing you know, the door clicked open. And here comes a gentleman in the fly. He's sitting in this office at the moment, but he's quite happy to speak. And with his hand on the shoulder, and I thought, I looked up and thought, thank you, God. I couldn't have got a better entrance for the judges to look. And so he actually meant it. That's what he does. They stand up for him, which we do. Right, so there's a lot of people in Uncle and Hillsborough.
You don't need a fighter for that.
You're not allowed to do anything. You're not allowed. So when the returning officer and gets his little helpers, So just to give you, imagine the returning officer is like a magician, and there is an illusion, and he uses his helpers or accountants in the council, and they're the magician's assistants, and they start switching votes and putting votes into other piles, and that's highly illegal. Right? And it's also malfeasance in public office, which carries a life sentence. Right? There's lots of things, that's why they're fighting us. Because they know we get the petition trial, we can prove they cheated. That means the returning officer's been going on trial for 2 series of offences. That's why they're fighting. Guess whose money's backing him up? Who all know? They will. So again, they would money fight council an election. You're one paying for their legal defence, right? Which is a terrible thing to be happening. There's lots of things I'm concerned about that, but I won't go too much into it. I'm going to like this one. So then, don't forget, these are all your common law rights. There's many more of them. These are the basics, right? So levying money, income tax, VAT, European tax is illegal. By the way, we're supposed to have left the European Union. That's bullshit. Right? You shouldn't be paying VAT. No taxation without representation. Right? You pay VAT. By the way, on average, going back about 10 years ago, there was 8 billion of fraud in VAT. Carousel frauds, right? Where fishing trader fraud. And the government admitted they had no way of knowing if someone was being fraudulent. Why would you pay that taxes and give him food on his cafeteria? Your money, right? And just because it's not their money, they don't care. It's a price of control. Commissioners for the international causes and all other commissions and courts of like nature, we are, for example, on the legal commissions. I'm not going to ask if there's any Jews there, right? Or any Hindus, I think I'm picking on Jews or not, or even Muslims, right? Any religious court in England is unlawful. You're not allowed to do it. The reason why is because you get religious fanatics. Whether it be Jewish, whether it be Hindus, whether it be Sikhs, whether it be whoever it is, and particularly Roman Catholics. Right? The reason I say that is because a lot of that is about Roman Catholics, not the Roman Catholics themselves, it's normal everyday people, the Jesuits. Right? Are not very nice people. You bet they're right, you understand what I'm saying. So what that means is you can't have Sharia, everyone knows got something like 18 to 100 Sharia books. Highly illegal. We actually went to an event in London through the Selden Society, which is another group that we belong to, and Lady Powell was given a lecture. And during that lecture, we asked some questions that made her flip, they turned the camera to her. Questions. She didn't want to answer them. She didn't want everyone to see that she couldn't answer the question. Well, funny, right? But Lady Howe, she was asked, there was a Muslim lady, and the Muslim barrister said, when are we allowed to have full Sharia law in this country? Lady Howe said, you can't. He said, why not? He said, it's forbidden by the English Bill of Rights. Right? It's not me just saying it, I'm telling you, it's unlawful. Why have we got on that? Shut them down. Right? It's in our law. You can't have that. But it's not, so I want to make sure I'm saying this right. I'm not picking on Muslims. I can't stand Sharia. I've got to be honest with you, I can't stand the Talmud either. The Talmud, which is Jewish, two types of Jewish law, the Talmud's even worse. Worse than the Sharia. Right? People don't even understand it. But you understand that. Well, I'm not an anti-Semite. Right? So when I'm saying to people, I don't like their laws, if you want to live in England, drop your laws out. Right? You live by the Constitution of England and our laws, which says you can't have someone blocking. Remember what I said to you earlier about Stuart blocking me in the cellar or whatever? Well, they locked this in because Christians in this country, you didn't turn up to church, so you can have to be in the restaurant. But if you weren't in there for 2 days, so there was all sorts of shenanigans going on with bishops and all that, because they had the power What that was brought in for was to neutralise that power. So you just lived your life without religious things, end up in front of that's the way they brought it in. And to be fair with you, most people are genuinely nice people. But all grants and promises of fines or fixtures of particular persons before convictions are illegal and void, nor excessive fines imposed nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Everyone understand that? You can't be talking about it. You've got to talk about it. No one in the world. Did you know that my fee, and I do hit the government, is £1,888 an hour? We're not in places that don't make it. Do you know why it's £1,888 an hour? There's 1,888 on a bus and been killed by the police in custody. Not one thing has happened to them people. Tortured, died in police custody, put on the floor, handcuffed in a prone position with 4 geezers on his back and suffocated. That's called torture. Right? But one of them police officers has never faced justice. They broke in Hertfordshire's a man's shins for nothing. Snapped his shins, dragged him out of the car, not one of them went to prison. That's called torture. We've got laws that protect us against that. No one is bringing it up. The only people who fight back are people in the English Constitution Society and the English Constitution Party. Because the British say, England, we don't have this. When you realise the people they're employing are not your friends, right? And anyone who ever gets arrested, you've got to be very, very careful. Not just that, but all promises of fine, right? So when they was giving credit, I've got some funny back during COVID. The amount of people that come and see me who said, I've got £10 fine, I can't pay it. I said, somebody what it said. Tick that box. They tick that box. I said, sorry, I said it back to him. He said, I want a trial. I said, then you do it, I'll be representing you. He sent it back. Come back and said, no further action. Oh, how many people take a fine? All you had to do is tick the box and say, I want a trial. They get so many £10,000 fines out, right? They couldn't cope with it, so they squashed them. But some people, I couldn't believe it. Why didn't you take the 10 grand? And I would have thought before you. Speeding cameras, I'm not going to go into speeding fines. Go for the speed cameras. That was actually brought up in Parliament. That a constitutional committee, but they admitted it was against the impeachment of life. You're not allowed to do that. But everyone sees the I'll put the points in your life. Or worse. What? They ban you from driving because of them. They're stopping you earning a living. And yet, that's brilliant. No loss, no harm, no injury, no fault. If you hadn't, and there was one chief constable, not so long ago, about 10 years ago, he can't go and he was well. He actually switched off all the speed cameras. And he instructed his someone's speeding, stop them, pull them over, and advise them to speed. Right? That's what the station is. They're not supposed to arrest you for anything. You haven't caused anyone any harm. Right? They say. You actually got people to stand up to. Gosh, they do. I told you how much they get from pensions and handouts when they retire. Anyone self-employed. The average chief constable gets just about £500,000 immediate pay out tax-free when they retire. That gives you £500,000 when you retire, right? The first pension for the rest of their life. That's why these people are now taking legally from us because the government's forward drives them. So that we've roughly covered. Don't forget with Australia, the end is right. The low of common law belongs to you, right? all your life. And that for the redress of all grievances and for the amending, strengthening, and preserving the laws, parliaments ought to be held frequently. Recently, it was once a year. Did you know that? Well, that's what the Glorious Revolution did. They went every 3 years. Right? You don't got every 5 years, mate. That's part of that's communist in your country. Communists do 5-year elections, which are a complete utter the sequencing. It's 5-year sequencing. Right? But no foreign. This is, remember I said in the Bill of Rights why we can't be in the European Union or the European Convention of Human Rights. This has got supremacy clause that says that no one can have only us. So then you go, but no foreign prince, person, prelate, state, or pontificate have or ought to have any jurisdiction, power, superiority, preeminence, or authority, preeminence, ecclesiastical or spiritual. The Jews can't tell you what to do. The Talmud can't tell you what to do. The Sikhism can't tell you what to do. Christians can't tell you what to do. So help me God. Why is that important? So help me God. It's solemn oath. Solemn oath is really serious. It means if you perjure, right? Perjury a solemn oath is akin to treason, because you ain't just putting treason to the people, you insulted God himself. Right? That's why that's such a serious thing. In English law, solemn oath. By the way, the same thing exists with marriage vows. If you take marriage vows inside a church, you are making a contract not only with your partner, but also with God. That is why you can never be divorced. That was a big argument with the king that when he divorced his wife, and they said you should be vows in the church. And then he said to the church, I would be part of your church, we should be divorced. But what I'm saying is, a solemn oath is a different oath. There's more. So again, just make sure you all get that, and you can all see that. Above are the common law constitutional rights removed by the British. It's British, it's all one. We haven't got an English vote. We have no English MP. Right. The Scottish MP, there's Northern Irish MP, there's Welsh MP, there's Welsh MP. You haven't got a single English MP representing you over that where your country is public with immigrants and rapists, because there's no one fighting your corner in that parliament. With the loans from that bus, right? He actually mentioned the English Bill of Rights. He spoke of England, but he's been brainwashed into believing that British unitary state is the way forward. It isn't. If you want to save the Union, all you have to do is avoid 20 acts of Parliament we've highlighted, reverse engineering, took that out of right? One of them is the British Nationality Act. Everyone here understands that you cannot, you can see from the ordinance, how many of you get annoyed? You cannot write on an official government document when it says what nationality you are. You're not allowed to write English. It only says British. Yeah. Most people get annoyed enough. Because they're English, they're Scottish, they're Welsh, they're Irish, Cornish. I'm going to get away with a problem with Cornish people being completely independent. I believe in self-determination, and quite the way, so did Jesus Christ. He was against the Roman Empire. So once people understand where this all comes from, British is an extension of the Roman Empire. We've traced all of this way back. Did you know that the Roman Empire, including the Jesuits, believe the British Isles is a province of the Roman Empire? They do not believe in England. They believe that the British Isles is a province of Rome. And it's an extension. That's what you're fighting against. But none of you have been taught it in school. So again, that's basics. don't want to do is go on too long if everyone wants to use the book. What we are going to do is have an answers to question sessions. Someone asked me questions about things right? We was really active during COVID, right? A wheelchair to the schools to say he could not jack kids, but he was going to come and work. But that left legally, it was absolute perfection. I'm not just saying it right up rightly. That letter went into certain schools and there was certain people with us that went in there, the grandparents, three copies, one to the board of governors, one to the mistress of the school, one to the form tutor. And in there it said, we're not being personally responsible if you said to me we don't do it. That letter then got published by the Daily Mail, right? 2 days later, the government retracted the whole thing and stopped kids being injected, all because of our letter. So if you think people like me, all you, can't do anything. You don't even use power of the common law of England and the constitutional rights. And you need to stand up and challenge. Shut down their system and tell them, I'm English, I'm not British. What does that sound like? I speak English, not British. By the way, President Huntley, for the second time. The official language of the United States of America is English. He told that. He sent another one out. What did it say? The Bill of Rights of the United States of America was written in English. Put that on. It's eating. It's telling their people, maybe the British regime, right? We know what you've done. You're going to the park and you're doing it again. But we're going to put a stop to it. Now you've started seeing the indictments. I'm not going to go into Trump if you like him, you dislike him. I'm not like his daughters to be I just see it as someone who's not part of their system. And they don't like it. So, we have a break, and then we'll ask questions or whatever. There's probably a couple of things up here. What I don't do, just to make sure you're aware, I never do these events scripted. Different people ask me different questions, it can be different subjects. But what we need to do is make sure, my job is to empower you to understand, and I'm hoping you will do. So if I said to you now, you have a constitution, you understand you've got one? Yeah. The books are there, written, it's codified in various places. England has been a nation since 927. The British have only existed. Within 70 years of the British being in existence, when I say British, I mean the absolute union, they attacked America. 70 years after, who did they attack? They attacked the English. And they stood up and said, when the British did before so they stood up with their guns and said, and then they said, with true English style and blood, we want the rights of an Englishman. And they fought for it. And they fought for independence and they got independence. I believe in self-determination. These people have took the piss out of us enough. And the English need to stand up and take back their country. Right? So if you have got that, what I'm going to do is say nothing before I do anything else. Apart from the obvious is one thing that we do is we say to everyone, it's your English flag, be proud of it. We don't want that pile of shit on the bottom of it. You've been brainwashed into believing it. And again, there at the front is the mega. We've had these for about 5 years. So, from our point of view, the English Constitution Society, the English Constitution Party, which is the political element, right? The Constitution Constitution. What we've got to do is go back to the same problems our ancestors had. stop publishing. And if people are looking for it, say, you say, that would stop this, that would stop that, that would stop this. And I say, yeah, we'll do it. But they won't listen to you. And all start winning it up. So remember, our ancestors handed you the eternal flame of freedom. You can hand it to the next generation. What I'm saying to you and empowering you for is don't let us be the generation that fails, that extinguishes that flame. But hopefully everyone's enjoying it. So don't forget to go to the bar and make a so busy back and nervous breakdown.
Well, there you go, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. I did the best I could with the sound, considering the circumstances. I actually went up there with just my phone and a stand and no mic, so I didn't do myself any favours. Still in the garage. Yeah, it was so educational for me. You know, you really see the whole regionalisation thing, what they're trying to do with England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, in order to remove all of those laws and replace it with something of their own vision. And if we don't act, if we don't educate ourselves, if we don't understand exactly what's going on, could lose it all forever. Choice is yours. Anyway, I'm going to work on the Q&A and release that as a second part. I think that's very important too. Thank you very much for watching. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, I'll talk to you soon. Toodaloo.